Hey Sunny! Alright, so here is your past life spread. So what we're going to do is go to where we're going, what you did with the majority of your time, an important day with the relationships and feelings involved, another important day, the death and lesson learned. And usually we get hints, of the time, but we're going to put that away based on this little card we got going on here. And again, all I'm going to do is relay to you images and impressions that are coming through. And your job is going to be to try to make connections where you can based off of, again, what's coming through and your current life. And I'll try to help however I can too, okay? Alright, so let's begin here. So this card right here, where we're going, is the Atlantis and Lemuria card. And before I laid that down and I was shuffling, they were giving me images of what you were doing, really. And it's really interesting because the feeling it had was being from one place and traveling very far to retrieve things to bring back. And that maintained when I laid this down, and it feels very much like this is a male life. And it feels like, first of all, that if it were either Atlantis or Lemuria, it would be Atlantis. However, sometimes this card can mean like legendary places, ancient civilizations, and not ancient civilizations so much in the way of ancient Egypt. It's more like ancient civilizations that we may not be aware of today, or that we might just only know as legendary or mythological, or something like that. And I feel like we're going to dip into that, but it feels also like, oh, Atlantis would be like a home base. So you have a home base, and it feels like we're looking at the life of a traveler who goes to this port and brings something back, and comes to this port and brings something back. And I feel like what we're actually seeing in this reading is kind of a little bit of an enlightenment of other civilizations that were around at the same time as Atlantis, but maybe did not get as much notoriety. So I'd like to start with a connection that you may have to ancient civilizations or legendary places, or let's say you grew up, and I mean, like, you could still like this now, but usually kids get into this more, even though, like, I'm into it now as an adult, so, no worries there. But if you love reading about mythical places, legendary places, places of lore, kind of like more, like if you were into folk tales or folk tales, essentially. Reading of people going off on the hero's journey to the unknown and finding, magical creatures, this and that. That's what it feels like. It feels like we are on Earth, but we are traveling to places that are either legendary and, we can find them in a book and people think they're made up, or they've yet to even be discovered or known about, so to speak. So if you have any connection with that, this can also mean that you may have dreams of going to a place. Here, let me fix that. There we go. You might have dreams of going to places that you can't say, oh, this is this country, or I've been here, or this. It'd be more like if you have dreams where you feel like you're going to like a ancient, what we would consider legendary place, just like a kind of a magical place, for lack of better terms. And if that's the case, you're visiting this life, at least this one. But it feels like you kind of made your way through this time period a lot, like you lived here a lot. It's interesting. Okay, so we're looking at the male life. So a connection to the male energy would be something to keep in mind. That means if you grew up as a tomboy at all, or if you have what society considers masculine traits, such as being outspoken or outgoing, or not backing down, holding firm in your argument, or who you are, confidence. Unfortunately, I feel like confidence would be a masculine trait. So if that has been any kind of issue in your life, I feel like this is coming up to talk about this confidence issue, if you deal with a confidence issue, because it feels like this male aspect of you was not like a general or a captain or anything of a higher rank. It feels like he was a lower rank worker. And it's interesting because when I get a lot of lives coming from Atlantis or these, really old, cool civilizations, most of them are people of somewhat of rank. Like they're coming up to show them that they worked with crystal energy or they worked, you know, like something cool like that. This is interesting because it's coming up as a, for lack of better words, commoner in this place that otherwise we think of as like, oh my god, it's magical, it's Atlantis, right? So I don't really get this a lot, and that's very interesting, and that to me is something to note. Something about there is a special, like thinking of the idea that there's something magical and something amazing and something profound and interesting like Atlantis, and yet there are mundane aspects to these amazing things. There had to be worker bees, in order to keep things going, right? But nobody thinks of them. So this, I feel like, is the theme of the confidence and also theme of not feeling special enough in life. And if this is a theme for you where you feel like you're not special enough, or you feel like you're not being recognized, or you don't recognize yourself enough, that's what I feel like is coming through this message of, it doesn't matter who you are just as important as a worker bee, as the captain of the ship, just as important. It's just that the external society places different values on people. And this is, I feel like, a big message to remind you that those values placed on people aren't real. It's an illusion. So you need to recognize that if you base your own value on external standards of society, this would be the time to drop them. This would be the time to literally do the work, do the process of, whenever you feel the feeling coming on, those feelings of the standards you've set on yourself. Recognize it. It's time to start to acknowledge every time you feel it and recognize it for what it is. An external standard has nothing to do with your heart and soul. And drop it, release it, let go, as though it doesn't affect you and it's not part of your reality anymore. Because it feels like we're starting to build on something for you, and you're supposed to be building on something, working towards something that has to do specifically with how valuable your energy is as an energy being in the world. So it's time to lay aside external notions of value. And I feel like the confidence is wrapped up in that. And I feel like we're also talking about this card, which is the laborer card. And I'll tell you right now, it feels again like you're like someone who's either someone who loads and unloads cargo on ships, or a part of the crew on a ship, but just, you know, the person handling the ropes or something like that. And hold on. And I feel like this is coming up dealing with the issue we're talking about, because even this poor, cargo person, even though they're technically not, let's say equal with the captain of the ship, in this time and this place, everyone is recognized for the important tasks that they do, because without this guy unloading cargo, that cargo is not going anywhere. Or he's recognized for the little jobs he does because it takes the burden off of someone else. So keep that in mind. There is a connection there about utilizing yourself in such ways that, again, society might put it in your head it's small. But it's not small because it's helpful in so many ways, because if you don't do something, someone else is going to have to do it, no matter how menial the task or how small the task. So keep that in mind. It doesn't mean that you should be doing things where you feel like you're being used or taken advantage of. So if you find yourself in these situations, that's where the confidence theme is coming up for you to stand up and say something. And also not be afraid to delegate your tasks, if you have any that you really don't like, to delegate them to other people. So I feel like what's coming up here is a little message to not be afraid to ask others to help relieve the burden that you may carry. And it's not talking about, big emotional burdens that you're placing on people. No, it's just talking about little things where people who love you want to help you. So make sure you're reaching out and make sure you're accepting and being in the receiving energy when somebody wants to help you or if someone's nearby. Also note that if you are, let's say, doing one of these menial tasks, I don't know what it is, but let's say you're doing this and you're feeling this way, like, I really don't want to be here doing this right now, like you really feel that, and someone shows up, you have to see that as the universe working with you to provide aid to you. So if somebody shows up at a, synchronistically at a certain time when you're like, oh, I don't want to do this and I wish someone blah, 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 and then someone shows up, you have to see that as now it's your turn to ask them for help because they showed up, because that is synchronistic. It's synchronistic. I can't talk. What is it? Synchronicity. There you go. Synchronicity. Yeah. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. So let's go to the first important day here. Keep making connections with these cards however you can. I also feel like the laborer card is coming in because it's a little bit of a message too to not strain yourself. You should not be physically straining yourself. This does not mean not taking care of yourself as far as like, oh, straining yourself in exercising and doing things that are good for your body, but not straining yourself in ways where it's almost like, hey, recognize your limitations. And I hate to say that because limitations, it doesn't mean like you're limited. It just means you're a human being. And as we get older, there are certain limitations we come across, like maybe it's easier to tweak your back. Or maybe it's, just like little things like easier to like pull a muscle nowadays, that kind of thing. So it's just recognize that there are certain limitations and not to push yourself past them, because you need to be utilizing different aspects of yourself as far as being of service and doing your mission here on earth. So don't draw attention and spend time and energy where it doesn't need to be spent, almost like a distraction. So let's say you do tweak your back because you're pushing yourself too hard physically. That's what this is about, is like, make sure you're taking care of yourself and not doing that because these are distractions that are keeping you from a smoother course down the path. Even though, yeah, sometimes these things come up because you're meant to experience them for a reason. Usually what it feels like is if you are experiencing that, it's only to redirect you onto the path by, let's say you tweak your back or something. It's to make sure you are not doing the physical thing you were doing before, kind of like shutting you down there. Hey, you need to like relax and focus on something else. So just make sure you're reading the situation correctly, and also make sure you're not pushing yourself too hard in ways that aren't part of like the soul mission. And you know the soul mission, you know what I mean? This also directly ties into helping, asking others for help. It's just like showing me an image of you like reaching up for like an item on a shelf, like in a box, and you're reaching, and then whoop, tweaked your back, that kind of thing. It's like when somebody's right there that's taller, you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. So just pay attention to your environment, who's around you, what you're doing. Pay attention to your body. Your body talks to you. You need to pay attention to your body. Okay, so let's go to the first important day here. So the first important day here is the move card. Let's go. So this feels like we are traveling, and it feels like you do travel as well. Here's family card. The family card is the relationship, and grateful. There we go. So I feel like what we're looking at is a day when you are assigned to travel, and it feels like there's two things that it feels like. So one, it feels like where you're going to travel is very intriguing to you. And two, it feels like you were given news that you would be paid more and bumped up a little bit more for something. There's something you were bumped up. And it feels like you had just started a family, like there's a child involved, at least one. And there is a spouse involved, which is interesting. This is actually really interesting because it actually feels like it's more like you aren't even, it's like you're engaged actually, but there is a kid involved. It might not be your child, but it might be your child. Here's the thing, I don't know how it was back then, like our society, this is where I have to like take a step back and not be biased, because in our society, you get married and then you have kids, right? Here it feels like, who knows, like maybe it's just normal just to have kids and be in love or be with a partner and not even, maybe they didn't even have marriage, you know what I mean? Like I don't know how that goes, but that's the feeling that's coming up anyway. But overall, it's a family unit. So it feels like there is a promotion involved. It feels like there's travel to a place highly intriguing to you, and it feels like things are picking up, nice momentum happening. You're still a laborer, you're still, a worker bee, so to speak, but it's just like life is just a tick more exciting now, and things are looking a little more hopeful. Sun's shining a little brighter, so to speak. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to see what else is coming through. Okay, so actually what I'd like for you to start connecting with would be, one, how do you feel about ships? As far as being on a ship, there could be a couple things here. Either one, you could love the idea of sailing, of ships, being on the ocean, or two, you might not even like ships at all. You might not like the idea of getting on a ship and going on a cruise or anything like that, but you might like the ocean itself. So that's kind of unique, but if that's the case, I feel like that would connect here, because what it did was the ships took you away from your family, your growing family, and there's a feeling of not wanting to go, so that could contribute to a feeling in this current life as not wanting to go on a ship, but enjoying the ocean, the coast, the beauty of it. On the other hand, if you like the ocean, the boats, the water, getting on the ship, cruises, blah blah blah, that would also be a connection too, because it's not like there was pure hatred for it. It was just like this feeling of like, oh, I wish I didn't have to go. But overall grateful for the opportunity. So if you find, actually with this, if you find that there is an opportunity coming along for you at this time, or it's in the works, or something coming up soon, keep this in mind. There might be an opportunity where there might be an aspect to it that takes you away from something you love for a short amount of time, but the payoff will be really good. So it's really up to you whether or not you want to just kind of endure maybe a few months or weeks or months or whatever it is, endure a certain aspect of a work, of an opportunity that might not be totally, enjoyable, but that would be like 10% of it during the whole time. So it's like pick and choose your battles kind of thing. So this might be the kind of thing that should you come across this opportunity happening, 10% you might not like, but 90% it'll be great, and then the 10% will go away after time, after you stick in there, is what it feels like. So keep that in mind as you move forward. Now the family part here also speaks to forming a family on the ocean, on the ship, because there has to be people working together on this. So you might find in your current life that your personality is such that you really you're really personable in the way where you make friends easily, or people take to you very easily, or you make it work very easily. In fact, you might be the kind of person where you are the glue amongst people, or if people are meeting for the first time and you're there, you might make things go very smoothly. That's what it feels like, because it's like you got here, he had to make it work. You just have to make it work when you're on a ship with people. I mean, it's just like you're living with them for months. You're traveling. You're going to be seeing every shade of every person over the course of months, living with them in close quarters. So it feels like, out of necessity and survival's sake, and civility and courtesy, there's a very personal aspect coming through here. So keep that in mind, but also I feel like it's coming through as kind of a nod for you to pay attention to and to utilize this to your advantage. And how you utilize this kind of thing is just be yourself. That's really what this is saying. If there's a situation coming up, or that you're in, or that you can think of, that comes to mind when we're talking about this would very much be a message of just be yourself. You are enough. You don't have to change. You don't have to alter. You don't have to think ahead. You don't have to put cards with conversation starters on it, whatever it may be. If let's say you do have social anxiety of some kind. Let's say you are nervous to meet something's coming up where you're going to be meeting people, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it's a family reunion. I don't know. Or maybe new colleagues, actually. No matter what, it's very imperative that you just be yourself. You'll be fine. So don't worry about that. And with that new opportunity we're talking about, potentially that you might be seeing, where remember the 10% kind of for a while, and then the 90's good though. Maintain the overall air of gratitude for the opportunity, for what's happening, and that 10% will go away even quicker. So just focus. This is just a little message of focus on the positive aspects of any given situation. This does not mean, ignore it if somebody's abusing you, or ignore it if, you're really feeling like really effing down. You know what I mean? Don't ignore it, but focus more so on the positive aspects of any situation, and you'll find that those darker aspects, if there are any, will fade away faster, or you will come to the solution, conclusion, resolution regarding that aspect, okay? So keep that in mind. And hold on, there's this. Oh, and then the last thing really might be your concept of what a family is. You could be very much someone that creates family from non-blood. Doesn't mean you don't love your blood family, but you might really understand what it's like to love someone that you're not born with, like, so to speak, that you don't share the same blood. Which I guess, of course, is easy. Of course, if anybody falls in love, you know how that works. But it's not really even talking about, even though this is the romantic aspect, there's also children involved in it. Again, it feels like there's a couple kids. It feels like one might be yours, whatever, and then the other might not. But the love is there, even for the one that is not. So, if you find you do have that ability and that soft spot in you to be able to love people fully with all you got, even though they're not blood, and not necessarily romantic either, this would come from here. But also what might come from here is a fondness for children. Whether or not you have children, it doesn't matter. It's a fondness for children, almost like it would be a theme in your life to make sure that, like, basically, if you read about young children who are orphaned, or children who are having it rough, or children in a dire situation, or, yeah, of course, everybody, hopefully, you hope, has a soft spot and feels bad for them, but this might trigger you. You might be like, I want to adopt them, and I want to raise all the children in the world. So you might have a focus on youth, potentially because of this. Though, not necessarily, but keep that in mind if that comes up. And we're going to go to the next important day here. So, this card here is the Wowzer card. I love this card. It usually gives you an aha moment or a level up in the soul, or something is surreal or interesting happens. And so we're at a Wowzer day. The relationship here is spouse. Okay. So we're looking at the spouse now. That's interesting. And then feelings here are held back. So, let's see what's going on here. Okay, this is really interesting. So, it feels like this trip turned into a much longer journey. Unexpectedly, it's like the place you went to, you'd never been before. It feels like that's why they promoted you, in a sense, is because it's almost like they prepaid everybody because they didn't know what would really happen, but they didn't tell you that. They just told everyone this is a typical journey. We're just going to go to a new port, is what it feels like. So you get to the new place, and you end up staying a lot longer. So there's a positive aspect to this, because again, what comes up is the message of focusing on the positive, and this person does such a good job of it, but it's almost out of necessity because they can't do anything but, otherwise it would eat them up. And what I mean by that is it feels like they go to a port, and this is where I was shuffling and I felt this too, is the port, this place feels like what you think of when you think of like the Far East, and like how we in history, like the white man traveled to the Far East for the first time, and they came across all these spices and all these materials, they know, silk, blah, 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 that kind of thing. That's what it feels like here. It feels like this is a whole new, land, a whole new, totally different place, with totally different things that you've never experienced before, like almost, possibly even different, different language and different culture, and again, what we would think of as, the Far East. And there's something so mesmerizing and amazing about it that it captures you. It captures your heart. It's like, if I can't explain it, the feeling that's coming through is just like mesmerization, just like, oh my God, this place is unlike anything you've ever, it's like you stepped into a whole another world, and it's mind-boggling. So that's the positive aspect. You're happy to be there because you're like, I can't imagine going on with life without never having known about this place. And this could actually inspire great desire in you today to travel. And even not just travel, but travel to places that are very unlike what you're used to culturally, such as the Far East, possibly. I mean, I don't know what you're not, what you're used to or not used to, but what we call it like not ethnic places. That's silly, but like spicy places. I know it sounds so weird, but like spicy places, like places that are just like, or maybe you like watching. Maybe in movies, that's where you might love movies that show other worlds or other lands, like faraway lands or things like that. So that's what it feels like though. And the other flip side, we're looking at the spouse here, because it feels like there's two things. Like, it feels like there's a couple things happening. It's like, one, the pining for the woman back home. And it feels like you actually end up spending like a year or more here. Like, at least, I'm going to say at least a year. It's very odd. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's because people are in talks about trading, or I don't know what, but it feels like you're spending such a long time there. But it's not just you, it's like the whole crew. And again, I feel like that's why they promoted everyone, gave everyone all this money, because they had a feeling that they wouldn't be able to like bring them back home for a while. It's kind of strange, kind of interesting. You also actually, if you have any issues in your current life having to do with false kidnapping, or feeling like if you're triggered when you feel like people are holding you back, as far as like keeping you in a room or keeping you in a conversation when you want to get out, if you have a time limit to people, as far as, look, I can only hang out for like 2 hours, otherwise I'm getting antsy, I need to go outside, like that kind of thing. If you feel like that, or you have to take breaks from people, or you have to know where the exit is, or basically feel like you're not being confined or held back or kept somewhere. If you have any of those issues at all, it would come from here. But at the same time, again, he is having the time of his life in the sense of, oh my God, I never imagined there was a place like this existed, kind of thing. Okay? So keep that in mind. But the feelings were held back for that purpose. So it feels also like the dual aspect of this card is the pining for the woman back home, but so much time is passing. There's also other women there. So that's not a bad thing, obviously. I mean, it's just like people are people. It's like human, you can't help it. Like, so it's almost like the feeling of he might consider taking, either he does or he considers taking a bride here, or like being in union here with another woman. And also, don't keep in mind, this person is very unlike him. So let's say he's like a typical white dude, let's just say that. This chick would be like spicy and beautiful and bronzed and different and just, different. And so there's this coming together of very different cultures. So however you might connect with that, I feel like is important for you. If there's any question in your mind regarding any romantic interest you might have, there's something here where it's like, one, if you're with someone, that person might be very ethnically different from you, and that might be very attractive to you. Or two, if you're not with someone, the person that might be right for you, that's coming along, so to speak, would be someone that is very ethnically different from you. That just might be a very you might have noticed that in your lifetime, if that's been very attractive to you. And if not, that's totally fine, but that's just what's coming through here. What also might be coming through, as far as, I feel like this is a bit of a romantic-y reading here, is as far as a partner goes, you might feel like having a partner in the first place might hold you back in many ways. So there might be a real fear when it comes to partnering up with someone romantically or committing to someone, the idea of committing, because of the fakaked situation going on here, where it's like you have someone back home, you can't reach them, you miss them, you love them, and then you're in this place and so much time is passing and you have so much love anyway, you know, like there's more love here. So this whole kind of confusing thing where you're dealing with your morals and integrity and this and that, it's like a message to go with the flow, see what presents itself to you. Again, the idea of discarding society standards when it comes even to romantic living. Get rid of labels. Get rid of it. Whether it's labels of, you know, your sexuality or monogamy or, you know what I mean? Just like kick it out the door and go with what feels right and good. And, you know, again, if you are not intentionally meaning to hurt someone and you follow your heart in the moment and it feels like a soul decision, go with the decision and move into the decision without guilt. Let go of the effing guilt. So just keep this in mind. Keep making connections here where you can. But again, it could very well be that the whole romantic situation for you might feel in itself that it holds you back in some way. You might have always had that feeling that a partner or having a romantic whatever it is, or romance itself holds you back. It could be because you might feel it changes who you are. It could be because you feel like you're compromising yourself. It could be because you feel like you'll let someone down. Whatever it is, that's why it's so important that you let go of any labels or any what is considered right, the right thing to do with relationships. And when you let go and you move through life without those labels, you'll attract people that will be the same way. And you're not going to settle for people that won't, you see. So just feel that out, make connections here. That's an interesting kind of thing. And we're going to move to the Death card. So here we have the Death card, which is, this is murder. So what I feel like is happening is it feels like the place that you're at, you actually don't go back home. It feels like you end your days in this new place, so you never make it home, which means that you may feel like you need a home base, or you might be someone that desperately misses your home whenever you do travel or when you leave it, or you want to just get back home, want to get back home. If you ever have had those feelings, need to get back home, I want my home, it would come from here. But at the same time, it could be something else where you might be someone who's very adaptable and very good at change and that kind of thing, because it had to happen here. You were adaptable, you were good at change, but you never made it home. So you might have a soul yearning for home. You might even yearn for a home that doesn't exist yet or in this life. Do you know what I mean? So if you've ever had a feeling like, I want to go home, but say you have a house or a home or whatever, and you have a family and this and that. Even if you have that, you might still have that weird feeling of, I want to go home. And it would just be residue from this aspect, not making it home, but making the best of it, the best of the situation. So you actually may be someone who's very good, again, at adapting into situations and making the best of any situation, and keeping that outlook at the silver lining of things. And that is the best thing you can be doing. That is a gift to have in this life, because it will keep you moving forward. However, I'm trying to see exactly what happened here. It's just not coming through clearly, maybe because it doesn't matter. This card doesn't always mean like murder in the sense of like someone's plotting it to get you and they do. This card does mean simply death by intention. So hold on something. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it actually feels like what happens is nobody else kills you. It feels like it's the intention, and it has to do with what you consume. So you consume things in this new land that your body is not used to and unable to take certain amounts of. It almost feels like, it's like as though you went from never touching alcohol or knowing what alcohol is to consuming lots of it. But not, it's like that's where the intention comes through. It feels like you intentionally consume it, but not to kill yourself, but it almost like that's what kills you is the drinking of whatever drinks are normal in this society. However, your body was pure before having it, and so it shut down organs, and that's what ultimately killed you over time. So this could translate into your current life if you have problems with certain organs that are affiliated with alcoholism. shutting down or having issues like your kidneys or something, even if you don't drink. Two, you might the issue of alcohol itself, either one, you don't like to touch the stuff, which would make sense because it killed you, or two, you love the stuff because it was something that really drew you in because you loved it here. So the theme of alcohol in your life, either no or hell yeah, you know what I mean? So keep that in mind as well, which would also be a message for you to watch it. If you do like it, just be careful with it. And also make sure you're getting checked up in the places where, let's say you don't drink a lot, but you do like drinking. Let's just say it. Like, so someone who likes to drink might, again, have issues with their kidney or something like that, right? So just make sure that you're going to see that you're seeing the doctor and make sure you're getting checkups and make sure you're just checking it out. I'm not saying anything's wrong, but let's say you have a weird, funky thing happen with an organ or something having to do where alcoholism would be affecting it, even if you don't drink. That would be a connection though, okay? Just something to keep in mind, and if not, that's fine. This can also speak to allergies, sensitivities you have to food or drinks. This would also speak to a tendency to be, not OCD, but if you have an addictive personality to certain things. And it doesn't have to be alcohol, it doesn't have to be like vices, anything bad. It's just like an addictive personality of like, once you find something you love, you might be like, oh, I need to binge on this for like a month because I love it. You know, like let's say you come across a new spice that you absolutely love. Then you'll put it in all your food for a month, you know, like that kind of thing. It could be like, even if you love a new song and you have to listen to it over and over and over again, if you have that kind of thing going on in your life, in any way, that would be a connection too. And if not, that's fine. But keep making connections where you can with that. Yeah. Now this here is the lesson card, and this is self-love, okay? So I feel like what this is referring to is that issue we talked about before, the theme of confidence and the theme of, not just confidence, but what was it? It was confidence and also it's kind of like standing up for yourself in the sense. It doesn't mean like you're in an argument, you have to stand up for yourself, but it's about paying attention to the things that are paying attention to your internal guidance versus what we're talking about as far as the external society standards. Because when you go by any external societal standards, you are not showing yourself the amount of self-love that you could be if you fully went by your internal GPS system. And I feel like that's what this card is referring to, is to make sure that you are following that internal GPS system when it comes to all the things we were talking about as far as any opportunities that might be coming up, spending time with certain people, making sure that if you want to leave the room, leave the room. Follow your instincts, follow your heart, follow what feels right to you. Don't label yourself or others in certain ways. Allow for the flow to occur. Just things like that. And yeah, and I just feel like that's really where the importance of self-love comes in, is basically it's self-respect by respecting and honoring the internal feelings that your higher self is really trying to get through to you every single day, okay? So pay attention to that and keep making connections. And anyway, there is your reading. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're able to make some connections in the first place, and thanks for letting me read you.